Call the Mayor's Charter Review Commission to order. If we could call the roll, please.
Chair Arnold.
Here.
Member Gambogi.
Here.
Member Holm.
Here.
Member McMinn.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Vice Chair Hess and Member Getty are excused from the meeting.
All right. 3A, approval of the minutes from our September 11th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Are there any comments or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Next, we're going to go to 3B, which is presentation and discussion by our committee regarding the proposed amendments to the Prescott City Charter related to, or that have been forwarded to the voters for the November 7th, 2023 general election. Just a couple of key points for those that are watching at home. During our September 11th meeting, the commission requested that we do one televised meeting where we would review the proposed charter amendments so that they could be put on social media as well as the City of Prescott's media page to help get information out. We are not in a position to advocate a yes or a no vote for any of these items. This is the culmination of now 10 months of work of this commission and making recommendations to initially the City Council and ultimately the voters for items that should be at least reviewed and considered. In some cases, it is whereby we've researched an issue or an item and are putting forward to the voters the option to either keep the city's operation the same or make a change. And we're going to walk through some of that now in this presentation and hopefully answer some of the questions that have been raised out there. So we'll jump into our first page. Originally, the city charter was approved in 1958 by the voters of the city of Prescott. It's been amended 14 times since then. The one correction I have is it's an average of every 5 years. However, it has not been amended since 2011, approximately 12 years ago. Oftentimes, these amendments have been made to address specific situations that have arisen or topics of significant community concern. Into our next slide. I think we went one too many, Sarah. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. Quick background. The committee started its work at the beginning of this year after being appointed by the mayor of the city of Prescott. The committee reviewed the 19 other chartered cities in the state of Arizona, current case law, and issues specific to the city of Prescott. Once the commission finalized its recommendations, those were forwarded to the city council for input. In some cases, additional research and work was done on specific recommendations, and ultimately the council adopted the proposals and have forwarded them to the voters. At this point, all of the voters in the city of Prescott should have received their voter's guide, and you can absolutely open that up and follow along as we work through some of these. Each one of these proposals is a standalone voting item that you will have the opportunity to vote yes, no, or take no action on. Next slide. Proposition 462, this is consideration of petitions. Currently, any citizen in the city of Prescott can come before City Council at a regular meeting and present a written petition. Such petition must be acted upon by the City Council within 30 days. The proposed modification would change that to 60 days. And just a little bit of information on the background. Currently, if you walk into the city during a council meeting and present your petition, within 30 days, so that's usually 2 meetings, it has to come before the council for a vote. By extending it to 60 days, it allows council and staff additional time to review the petition before they take action. Next slide.
And I'm sorry, I did miss 61. This clicker is being a little tricky. Yeah. Ian, would it be possible for you to go through each of the slides? I'm sorry, the clicker is not wanting to go. Could you go up to 461 and then we'll go back to 463 after Charlie's done talking about 461, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sometimes technology isn't always our best friend, but we've got it fixed. All right, Proposition 461, which is an absence to terminate membership. Currently, if the mayor or any council member is absent from more than 2 consecutive called meetings without the consent of the council, that individual ceases to hold office. Under this amendment that is proposed, there is some new definition of what is a meeting, what is the necessary notice, and how many consecutive meetings would a council member or the mayor miss prior to ceasing to hold office. And you can read into the details here, but specifically we're clarifying what the existing language says and providing a little bit more detail to that item in 461. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. We discussed 462 again, consideration of petitions. That'll be the second proposition in your voter's guide. The next slide. All right, 463, qualifications of electors, registration, and candidates. This is something that has come up multiple times over the years in the city of Prescott, and I best described it as the city clerk who administrates the elections for the city of Prescott is oftentimes put into a very unique situation. She, in this case, works at the pleasure of the existing mayor and council, 7 members, but may also work at the pleasure of the members to be elected. And historically, the clerk has been put into a situation where they are required to go through the petitions and administrate challenges. Under this new proposal, it would eliminate the clerk's role in doing that and would refer petition challenges to the judicial branch where the commission in general felt that it belonged. It also amended language that is no longer applicable. It used to be that you would do a statement of organization or a $500 threshold exemption to become a candidate, and now those rules have changed under state law, and thus the need to update our charter as it relates to elections. So 463 specifically eliminates some of the role of the clerk while also eliminating things that are no longer current in election law in Arizona. Next slide, please. 464, independent annual audit. This proposal is updating the language to provide for a 5-year contract over the current 3-year contract. Existing language says that the city will hire an independent auditor for 3 years at a time. The commission and the council heard from our finance director that the industry standard is now 5 years and that it is creating challenges in the city's ability to find and hire auditors having a 3-year restriction. So the recommendation is this modification to 5 years for 464. Next proposition. 465. This has to do with the lease of city property with the option to purchase. When the charter was initially created, there was very little language about the sale of city property, and there was no reference whatsoever to the city's ability to do a lease purchase. Since then, the city has entered into lease purchase agreements that have been items of significant community concern, and ultimately 465 is a proposal that would create language and guidelines for how the city can enter into a lease of city property with the option to purchase, including the time of the appraisal, the valuation of the appraisal, the notification of the public. So a no vote would have the effect of maintaining the current wording on city sales. A yes vote would add this language to the city charter, providing the option to purchase when doing a lease. Next slide, please. 466, the mayor pro tem. That is the individual who fills in the absence or disability of the mayor. Currently, it's Mayor Pro Tem Montoya. And traditionally, Every year, the council has selected a new mayor pro tem. Some have served multiple terms, some have not, but there is very little definition in the city charter as it relates to the mayor pro tem. So ultimately, the commission reviewed that, looked at what was happening elsewhere, and has made the recommendation that we specify the term of mayor pro tem as 1 year and determining the meeting at which such designation shall take place. So again, it creates a 1-year term for that role and designates what meeting the election for the mayor pro tem would occur. Next slide. 467, nomination for general election. Many of you may recall in not this last election, but the election before, there were a lot of questions about what happens in a runoff, especially if one of the two candidates that moves to the runoff drops out of the race, which is exactly what occurred. There were significant questions and challenges that came up at that time, and ultimately the language in Proposition 467 is here to clean up those questions and concerns and to provide a more clear direction to the clerk's office and on elections of who moves forward and what happens in the event that a withdrawal occurs. Next proposition, 468. This one is qualifications. Currently, according to the charter, if you've lived in the city of Prescott for 1 year prior to the election, you are eligible to run for and be elected to serve on the city council. The recommendation of this proposition is to change that to 3 years. You must be a resident of the city of Prescott for no less than 3 years prior to the election in order to be qualified to run for and hold office as mayor or a member of the council. So a yes vote would change it from 1 year to 3 years. A no vote would remain the current wording of 1 year. Next proposition. 469, this is removal of city manager and amending Article 3, Section 1. If you would like to have some light reading, I'd recommend you pull out the city charter and you go and take a look at the language in the removal of the city manager and the multiple pathways that a manager can be removed from the city of Prescott. The clarification and recommendation here is to remove the multiple pathways and to clarify the language to state that simply the city manager serves at the pleasure of the council. A no vote would retain the existing language, which provides for public hearings and additional steps that can be taken depending on how the manager is terminated. In Proposition 469, it is simply stating that the manager will serve at the pleasure of the council, and that is by a vote of the majority of the council representing the city. Next, Proposition 470, the sale of city property. This adds additional language to the city charter that says several things. Number one, if the value of the city property being sold is in excess of $4 million, then some very specific things must occur. 1, 2 public hearings to receive public comment shall be held on different meeting dates within the 60-day period prior to the council meeting where the proposed sale is going to be discussed and possible action taken. Number 2, the sale must be authorized by a supermajority vote, 3/4 of the city council approving the proposed sale of property. The commission's discussions around this revolved on the dollar amount. Many times throughout the year, the city of Prescott will dispose of real property. It could be easements, it could be a small parcel, it can be a lot of different little things. But when it comes to the city disposing of a high value, large dollar property owned by the taxpayers, the recommendation in Proposition 470 is that there should be more public involvement and there should be a requirement that it is something the entire council, or in this case, 3/4 of the council, the supermajority, agree to the sale of the property before it takes place. Next one. Proposition 471, stipend of mayor and councilman. A yes vote shall have the effect of updating the monthly stipend amount for the mayor from $750 per month to $1,250 per month, and council going from $500 to $850, and sets the requirements for the annual CPI adjustment to take care of council stipends going forward. Currently, the mayor of the city of Prescott is paid $750 a month, and the council members are paid $500. And our discussion revolved around how much time can someone dedicate to the city. And we also took a look at what other communities are paying their council members and their mayor. And in some cases, there were communities that were incredibly high. In excess of $70,000 a year. The commission looked at what was realistic within the budget constraints of the city and the amount of time that council members historically, not just the current ones, but previous ones have put in, and have made this recommendation to take a look at this modification. Next. Proposition 472, the term of the mayor. This was one, again, that came up in one of our initial commission meetings and was discussed as a item worth at least sending forward to the voters to consider. It's split roughly 50-50 through the chartered communities of 4-year versus 2-year terms for the mayor. Currently, every 2 years in the city of Prescott, the mayor and 3 council members are subject to election. So year 0, you're electing 3 and a mayor. 2 more years later, you're electing the other 3 and a mayor. Proposition 472 gives the voters the option to determine whether or not the mayor should be, yes, a 4-year term, or no, a 2-year term in that office. Next. 473, vacancies in the council and office of mayor. Previously, the council was given 2 options, and you have seen those play out, whereas a vacancy occurs and a member is appointed to the council until the next election, as in Councilwoman Cantelmi specifically. She was appointed to fill the vacancy until the election. Before that, Councilman Tenney was appointed to fill the remaining term of the vacancy, which exceeded 2 years, so it went beyond the next election cycle. This was an item that drew a lot of discussion and consideration in the community from the last 2 councils. And so what Proposition 473 is putting forward to the voters is it creates more direction to the city council about what their opportunities for filling a vacancy is. And simply put, if there is a reasonable amount of time prior to the next election for someone to be appointed, then they can be appointed till the next election. And if we're a week away from the next election and there's no way to appoint and then hold an election for that seat, then it provides the council with the opportunity to appoint that person for the remainder of the term. But it no longer would give the council the option at, say, month 5 that a vacancy is created in a 4-year term to appoint someone all the way through the remainder of the term. It would create that seat being up for election, just as what happened in our most recent election here with Councilwoman Cantelmi. Next. Last but not least, again, as we started off our meeting, we cannot advocate a yes or a no vote on any of these items. These are ideas and recommendations and propositions that are being put forward to you, the voters, for consideration. The only way the charter in the city of Prescott can be amended is by you participating and voting. And our request is please take the time to read the voter's guide that was mailed out to you. Take the time to learn a little bit about the propositions and make a decision based on how you feel each item impacts the city of Prescott and whether you want to keep it the same or you'd like to see something different. There's nothing really more to it than These are items that were brought up by a group of citizens looking back over the last several years, doing historical research, going back into the Daily Courier from 20 years ago to find out why was something done, why was that implemented, is it still applicable today, has something changed that would make it make sense to recommend amending the charter. And with that, I would open it up for any comments from the commissioners, and if we have anybody from the public with a comment. All right, hearing no questions or comments from the commissioners, then we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much for taking the time to participate, and hopefully you learned something about these propositions to make you more informed.